Okay, welcome to task C of the FOI. Once again, on the left, I have the ACS. If you don't know what that is, it looks like this. Just look up CFI ACS on the FAA website, and then this is the most current one. Then scroll past all of this, table of contents, and then task C is right here. And that's course development, lesson plans, and classroom training techniques. This one gets pretty repetitive. If you haven't seen my two other ones, I made this document. And yeah, I just tried to create either the definition or a abbreviation for each piece of the ACS. But it should go over every single piece just because that's everything that can ask you on the check ride. So this should just cover everything. I did A and B so far, and then I'll do the rest of it soon. But yeah, let's get into it. First one, we have teaching, including process. So the first one we have here is PPAR is the acronym, so, or the abbreviation. Preparation, so having teaching material ready, binders and slides. That one's a big deal for a CFI because you have to be prepared, or your student can become apathetic towards you. You know, if you're not coming prepared or with an idea of what you're going to do that day, they can sense that you're not prepared. And then presentation, so giving that material to the student, whether it's in a slideshow or you're showing them during the flight or whatever it is. It's just how you're presenting it to them. And then application, the student uses the material taught. So maybe it's asking them questions, maybe it's during the flight, or you're giving them a scenario based question and they have to answer it. And then review, go over the lesson to conclude. That one's simple. You just conclude everything you went over. And then essential skills. This is PIMA. So if you're going to be a good teacher, you have to have these essential skills, is what this one is going over. So people skills, you have to be able to communicate with other people, connect with your student. If you're not very good at communicating with people, it just takes time, takes practice, but that's a big deal. You have to be able to connect with your student. That way they can learn from you. And when you teach them something, it's relatable, it makes sense to them, and you're able to convey that information that you know so it makes sense, or they're just not going to be able to learn. Expertise, the teacher is knowledgeable. I mean, we're all knowledgeable. If you're at this point, you know basically everything. So just keep learning and stay up to date on all of your knowledge. Management skills, you're able to organize, plan, and create a lesson. You have to do this every single time. And like we have our lesson plans that break it down for us perfectly in order. You can also use like the syllabus, just coming in with an idea of what you're going to do before that student comes in. And then assessment skills can give the student feedback that will help them. So in order for them to learn, you have to give them feedback. That way they know what they did right, what they did wrong, and that helps them learn. And then we have course of training. So this one is just going to be using like the ASA syllabus is what I like to use, or whatever, if you work at a flight school, whatever syllabus the FBO uses. Using the ACS, that one's for, I mean, you want to use it all the way through training, a little bit more towards you get towards the check ride, but especially for check ride, just so the student knows what they need to do and what standards to set. And then for your lesson plans, I use Wi-Fi CFI or Backseat Pilot, and those are just already made for you. And if you get the up-to-date ones, they go right through the ACS, so those are really nice. And use those for the ground. And for preparation of flight, I did these in a little different order, but just to make it an acronym that makes sense. So PODS is performance-based objectives. The instructor sets a standard for the student that lesson, and that can be more or less challenging. So if you're with your private student and you're like halfway through, you're probably not, or you're a quarter of the way through, or you're towards the beginning, you're probably not setting them to ACS standards already because they just got in the plane. They're not going to be able to do a steep turn plus or minus 100 feet. They're just not going to be able to do that. So this is setting a different standard for them. Like instead of 100, you're doing, let's just keep it to 200. And then even as you get closer and closer, you can go on the other side of the ACS. And my instructor did this, was he started to set me to commercial standards. That way, if I'm only dropping down 50 feet or 75 feet, it's like, well, if you can do that, you can do 100 on your private check ride. So next is objective. They got to know why they're learning that subject. You have to give them that why, or it's going to go right over their head. They're not going to understand why they're learning that thing. So set the objective. Decision-based objective, that is just you giving them a scenario where it requires some sort of aeronautical decision making, some sort of decision that they need to make. Yeah. And then standards is just using the ACS standards. Again, that's just for the check ride. The ACS standards are set for the check ride. So as you get closer to the check ride, make sure you're giving them those objectives in those standards. That's all 4 of those. Organization of material. This one is IDC. This one's kind of a loaded one because introduction and development have their own. But introduction is the AMMO acronym. So for the introduction, you have to give them the attention, gain the interest of the learner, motivation, student feels the information is useful and interesting, and then overview. The teacher provides what the lesson will be about. So you want to give all 3 of those at the beginning. I mean, the attention, you don't need like a hook like you're in like English class. You don't have to, create like some big pizzazz, but just give them that why, I guess, would be the attention and the motivation. It's like, why are we learning this? That way their brain can start to make those connections, like, how am I going to use this? And then the overview, the teacher provides that lesson. So just everything you're going to go over, essentially. And then you have your development. I did the SCIMP acronym. So when you're teaching them, you want to go for all 4 of these. It'll be simple to complex. So they don't know anything. So you want to start simple, make your way to the more complex overview of everything. And then the known to unknown. So start with what they might know or might be able to have a connection with. And then slowly start to bring in the stuff that they might not know. And that way they can make those connections at first and slowly make more and more connections until they have the whole thing understood. Most used to least used. So you want to go over the most important stuff first. Like, you want to go over airspace, you want to go over systems, stuff that they're going to see when they're flying. You want to go over, comms, maneuvers, different parts of the airplane. You want to go over all that stuff because that's going to directly affect them right away. And then once you get closer to their check ride, that's when you can start throwing in the little things that are just kind of details for the overall everything that they need for their check ride. And then past to present. So that is the development. And then, and then conclusion, you just go over everything. Just wraps up all the information. That way, if you went over a lot of stuff, the conclusion's helpful because you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about the stuff at the beginning or in the middle. So just go over everything they learned. Maybe give them a evaluation of everything. If you were asking them questions throughout the whole thing, just be like, hey, maybe go over this a little more. And then we have training delivery methods. These won't really apply as much for CFIs, but these are just overall different ways to teach a student or multiple students. So I'll just go in order down here and then I'll just check them off on the ACS. So cooperative and group learning. I did CC, DDD, LG. There's just a lot of these, so that made the most sense to me. I can remember that one in my head. So cooperative group learning, students are put into small groups to solve problems. This was like in school when you had like 4 desks and they put them into clumps, and then she would say like, go to your groups, just like that. Computer electronic assisted method. This would be your Shepherd Air, your Sporties. Shepherd Air would be like for your written, and then Sporties has just a ground lesson on their website. So anything like that. That one they actually put separately, but I put it in here. Cooperative and group learning. And then we have discussion methods, so lecturing and then having a discussion with the students. I really like this one. I liked whenever my teachers would do this because, if you just teach something and move on, then it's like, I'm not going to remember that. But if they can teach something and then just ask the students what they got out of it, maybe see if you have to go back over something. That's the discussion method. Demonstration performance. This one is EDSI. This one's probably the most important one because we'll use this one a lot when we're flying. So the EDSI would be, this one's in order. So explain is first. So teach the maneuver, give them kind of an idea of what the maneuver is, especially when you're flying. Half the time it makes no sense when you first learn it. Like when I was learning eights on pylons, like I was like, I do not understand what that maneuver should look like. So explain what that maneuver is, what you're supposed to do. Demonstrate. So I prefer to explain on the ground and then explain it again in the air, but then this is where you demonstrate it. So I'll go do the eights on pylons, talk about first 45 degrees, max nose high, and then overbanking tendency at your 90 degrees should be level, max nose low at your 135, and then at 180 degrees, finish at your original altitude. Just like that, demonstrate how you should do it. And then this is the part where the student performs it. So maybe you're barely touching the plane, but you're letting them do a majority of it. And then the instructor supervises. So make sure you're not just on your phone, like you're actually watching, you're moving along with them, making sure, they don't put you into a spin or something. And then evaluation, you just give the student feedback on on their performance. So that should be, okay, yeah, drill and practice. Student practices the same skill over and over. If you watch my last video, that would be like the blocked practice. So just doing something over and over and over, just like maneuvers, or you can do it on the ground too. The lecture method right there. Instructor delivers lectures to a mostly silent class. So this is just like in college when there's just a class of 200, 100, 200 people, they're going to do the lecture method because there's just too many people to have that kind of back and forth conversation. So this is just telling a bunch of people in a silent class and they're all just listening to what you have to say. And then guided discussion method. Students have a guided discussion on a known topic. So they already have some sort of idea of what you just taught them, and you're just having a discussion about that topic. Now we have instructional aids and training technologies. And then I did this one out of order too, just because I want to make it easier for me and you guys to memorize these. So GERT, the guidelines. So aids are not used just as a crutch, and if they're overused, can create apathy for the instructor. So when you're using instructional aids, let's say I'm using an airplane or I'm using my lesson plans, especially lesson plans, if I'm just reading from my lesson plans, or every time they ask me something, I go right back to my lesson plans, they're going to create apathy. So the guidelines are, use them as an aid, but don't use them as a crutch, because if you overuse them, it looks bad. Um, Effective aid. So establish the objective and use the aids to support the lesson plan. So just make sure that you're setting that objective whenever you're teaching, and use it to help you. Because it is hard, it is easy to get off topic or forget something. So if you use it correctly, it can be very helpful. Reasons for the use of instructional aids would be helps the student to visualize a concept that would otherwise be difficult to comprehend. So I really like using a tiny airplane to do maneuvers. Just whenever I would have an instructor just kind of tell me what something is, and they would give me the ACS standards for it, or like bank 25, 15 degrees nose high, and then like you already lost me, because like when I was working on my privates, like I just don't have that connection yet in my head. So if I can use a small airplane and kind of show how the airplane is moving through the air, that can really be helpful when the student can't quite comprehend. And then the types, um, physical aid, mini airplane, using a whiteboard, using a flight sim. Videos on YouTube can be super helpful, especially for systems, and then like a slideshow. Integrated flight instruction. So this would be if you're flying and you kind of want to have this put throughout their whole training. So at first you want them mainly looking outside, just getting a feel for the airplane, what it's like, what it looks like when you're straight and level, like putting your fist up on the dashboard and then the distance between the horizon and the dashboard should be like a fist height, and that, so you just want to start outside, but then it's slowly putting in the reference to your instruments, especially once you start getting ready for the check ride. Using those instruments help you a lot, because like obviously you can't look completely outside and not set those ACS standards. So this is just doing a little bit of outside and a little bit of inside, and whatever you feel like would help them most, doing a little bit of both. um, Problem-based instruction, so the lessons involving problems or scenario, back to HOTS like in task B. So that high order thinking skill, it's using that creativity in their mind, if they have a problem, giving them that scenario where it creates some sort of creativity. Like if I just pull the power and I'm like, okay, what should we do? And they have to go through their ABCDE checklist, and even just like finding a place to land creates that high order thinking skill, where it's like, that one kind of looks like a runway, but then, well, the wind's coming in this way and we could land on that road, but there's, maybe some power lines there, so that's not a good idea. It's like using those high order thinking skills. And then we have planning instructional activity. This is our last thing. This can be kind of hard to see right here, but the blocks of learning, the student masters the fundamentals of the lesson, and then over time they start to stack up until you have the whole objective. Let me just look this up so you can see it. There we go. See, this is on the FAA website. Perfect. Okay, so here it would be like ground operations, basic maneuvers, airport operations, communication using those comms. So those are all the fundamentals. And then from there, once they have those mastered, then you go ground reference maneuvers, slow flight, all those, emergency procedures, pre-solo written exam, and then boom, right at the top, you have your first solo. So it's like you have all these little things you're mastering, slowly getting higher until you get to your final objective, which in this case is your solo, but you can do it for anything you're really trying to teach them. And then we have The lesson plans, oh, this one I did the BLT. So instead of BTL, just BLT, I thought it would be easier to remember. So lesson plans, just designated or designed to assure each learner receives the best possible instruction and assist the instructor. So using those lesson plans, especially if you think it'll help that student, making sure you go over everything that you wanted to go over, because it's so easy to just forget something little. Um, and then finally is your training syllabus. Oh, we already went over that, but going over your the ASA syllabus is what I really like. That's what our FBO uses, whatever your FBO uses. Um, but yeah, just having that way, it's like if you don't know exactly where to go next, like that can help you a lot. Just what should we do next? Just checking off all those boxes until, that it should be the same as like blocks of learning, because the way it'll go through that syllabus, it'll knock out those important things before you get to the solo, and then you get to the cross country, and you get to your check ride prep, just like that. And yeah, that is it for task C. I'll be doing task D next. Once again, if you guys want me to put this link to this doc, I can turn it into a Word document. It should go over every single part of the ACS. That way you don't miss anything, and you can just pop this up during your check ride. They don't expect you guys to memorize every single one of these. I will call it out if there's one that's really important. I think in here, you want to know the demonstration performance, and then, yeah, I mean, the rest of these obviously are important, but just kind of having an idea of what they are. But just if you guys want me to put this in the link, I can do that. And yeah, I'll do task D next. Thanks for watching this video, and comment if you need any help with anything at all. And yeah, that's it.